Hello and welcome to Krown Countdown U, the Canada West edition, maybe the busiest Canada West edition of the winter and spring. Coming up on this week's show, Final Four action in men's and women's basketball. We'll get the 4-1-1 from the man that called the action as Lucas Meyer drops in from Calgary. Justin Dunk will join us, fresh off of covering the CFL Combine for cfl.ca. And with the Rouge dominating at that Combine this past weekend, Laval's offensive line coach Carl Brennan joins us from Quebec City to give us the how and why. We lead with action from men's hoops, with this year's Final Four going down in Cowtown. It was an all-BC affair in the first semi. First cue, this three-ball from A.J. Halloway puts the Birds up by 7. That lead grows to 10 with this beauty drive and finish by Jordan Jensen-White. UBC leads by 7 after 1. Second cue, Wolfpack down 6. Josh Wolfram throws down the putback slamma-jamma, then Vladimir Igorov. Third cue, Jensen-White throws down the nasty one-handed hammer to put the Birds up by 6, but the Wolfpack then go on a run. Jeff Tubbs hits the pull-up J, taking a 2-point lead into the fourth. In the final frame, Wolfram nails the Jimmy to put TRU ahead by 2. 3 minutes to go, Jensen-White continues to attack, cuts the deficit to 2. But Wolfram stays hot, stroking another jumper, growing the lead to 4. Under 2 to go, Jensen-White the bucket plus the foul. Final minute of play, Wolfram hits the massive 3 to go up by 4. Dying seconds, Philip Jalapur with a desperation heave, but it's way off the mark. TRU stuns the T-Birds. So the Wolfpack are in. Who would be joining them in the final? Manitoba was hot early, jumping out to a 10-point lead in the first 5 minutes. But Thomas Cooper's jumper kicked off a 16-7 run for the Dinos. Calgary leads by 5 after the first. Second cue, and Cooper shows off his MVP game. Massive throw down. Calgary takes a 9-point lead into the break. Second half, Justice Allen hits the long 2, falling into his bench in the process. But this run out to reverse layup from David Kapinga closed out the quarter with the lead now up to 15. Calgary punches its ticket to the final with a 26-point win. In the bronze medal game, UBC dropping 16 from outside the arc. Connor Morgan scored a game-high 28 points, while the Birds bench chipped in for 54 points. Birds are bronze. From bronze to gold we go. This triple from Reese Prabilski put the Pack up by 10 in the first 3 minutes. But Lars Schluter hits a money ball of his own. That kicks off a 12-4 run for the Prehistorics, who own a 4-point lead after 1. Second cue, Igorov shows off his old-school game, backing his man down for 2. But the 3-ball was dropping for the Dinos all game long. Kapinga nails another one to put the Dinos ahead by double digits. Calgary leads by 13 at halftime. In the third, Jasdeep Gill with the steal shows off the sweet behind-the-back move, and the hometown crowd is digging it. Fourth cue, under 5 minutes to go, this trifecta from Schluter puts the Dinos ahead by 11. The Wolfpack would try to hang around, but the Calgarians are stampeding. The Dinos nail 12 money balls in the game. They take the title, disposing TRU by 7. Over to women's action now. The Alberta Pandas spoiled Saskatchewan's perfect season with 3 games to go and did it in Saskatoon, no less. Would it be payback time for the Huskies in Toontown? Someone in green is going to the finals. Alberta's Jesselyn Fairbanks comes out with the hot hand. She connects with 9 points in the opening cue, give the Pandas a 4-point lead after 1. To the second, and Sabine Ducate heats up. She goes off the glass for the bucket, cutting the deficit to 2. Then she drops one from circle drive to put the Huskies ahead by 1. Saski dominates the cue and takes a 7-point lead into the recess. Second half, and the Ducati show continues to roll on. She scores 16 of her game-high 29 in the half. Saski is off to the final with a 10-point win. Cougars and Griffins, and this one was not pretty early on. First cue, Griffins turn it over, which leads to this stop and pop from Sydney Dobner. Unlike Donald Trump, this game was not offensive. Only 20 points combined in the Q. And in the second, Cougars down by 1. Katie Polishchuk with the hoop and the harm. Regina leads by a deuce at the half. Third Q, and Alyssa Kajati lights up. She scores 8 straight for the Cougs. This one capping off the run to put Regina up by 9. They take this one by 6, setting up an all-Saskatchewan final. But first, it's an all-Edmonton bronze medal game. The Griffins jump to it. Kelly O'Hallahan with the hesitation move, nailing the J. While at the end of the Q, Kendall Lydon hits the jumper to put GMAC up by 3. Second Q, Pandas take over. Maddie Rogers hits the tray to give Alberta the lead. Alberta goes on an 8-0 run to close out the half with Megan Wickstrom scoring back-to-back buckets. The Pandas travel to Saskatoon to own Edmonton. Battle for the golden rectangle. It was back and forth from the opening tip. Megan Lundquist hits the J to put the Huskies up by 1. But right back down the floor, Kajati replies for the Queen City. Regina leads by 3 after 1. Shift to the second, Ducati breaks out, scoring a dozen of the Huskies' 22 points in the Q. But the Cougars would not back down. Dobner shows off her arsenal of moves, scoring consecutive baskets with some slick handles on her way to the rack. But the Huskies closed out the quarter on a 7-0 run. Ducati nailing the long triple as Saski takes a 6-point lead to the break. To the third Q, Regina makes like Patsy Cline. They fall to pieces. Only 3 field goals in the quarter, but Ducati stays hot. Nails the 3 to extend the Huskies' lead to 22 after 3. Fourth Q, a Ducati. She finishes 4 of 6 from downtown Toontown, and the Huskies are Saskarific, 73-62, and win the West for the 4th time in school history. Lucas, let's first recap the men's side. Calgary lived up to their #1 ranking. Let's take a look at the final first.
Yeah, they really did, Jim. And I think they played a very, very good game. Not their absolute best, but they played quite well. They got 30 bench points to TRU's 10, which is very, very important. Got off to a pretty good start. We talked about Lars Schluter having to have a pretty good game in order for them to win. And that's what he did. He had 14 points and a very timely shots as well. The MVP, Cooper, 9 of 9 from the free throw line. And the Dinos got 25 points off of turnovers. The real adjustment that you could see from the TRU-UBC game is they had to do something against Thompson Rivers point guard Reese Prabilski. And David Kapinga just made life miserable for him. And he just really steadied the ship at point. 9 points, 7 assists, 3 steals. They didn't get enough from Igorov early, did TRU. And Calgary, they just had the offense that TRU could not match up with.
So with UBC losing, they now face Ryerson in the opening game, the #1 ranked team in the country. Set that up for us.
Ryerson is incredibly impressive, and it's their defense that really won them that first ever OUA championship at home against the Carleton Ravens, which really stands out. Carleton is a team that averages 86 points per game. They held them to just 68, really locked them down in the second half after Carleton took a first half lead. That was critical. They make and take the second most threes in the country. They're a pretty good rebounding team. And when they have to lock it down, it's critical because they've just had these guys like Aaron Best and Adika Peter McNeely and Kareem Green inside, who is just a beast. And that's what's going to be so fascinating with him going up against Connor Morgan. If I'm Ryerson, I'm not particularly thrilled about having to play the home team who has not played their best basketball. You'd think they're due to have a really, really good game. Ryerson's been #1 all year. They should win, but I don't think it's going to be easy. But for UBC, you cannot fall behind early. If you fall behind early against guys like Aaron Best and Adika Peter McNeely, Ryerson is going to win that game. You got to have a strong first half and hope that crowd can help you out if you have any chance of getting an upset.
On the women's side for the Canada West Final Four, just how predictable was that outcome?
Yeah, we talked, right, Jim. We talked about this last week. We saw this kind of playing out. It was definitely going to be a rough draw for Alberta having to play Saskatchewan in the first game. That's what happened. Saskatchewan wins. Alberta wins the bronze, moves on to the CIS championship. And in the final, again, Saskatchewan, Regina, that's what everybody expected. And so Emerson kind of controlled the paint defensively, only had 6 points, but really controlled defensively. And then you have Daly and Ducati who really kind of took it to Regina, and the Cougars didn't really get did not get enough of their backcourt to really match up with Saskatchewan, and it's just been a magical season for Lisa Tomaitis' squad.
Are the Huskies on a crash course to meet number 1 McGill in New Brunswick?
A McGill-Saskatchewan final is definitely possible, but I wouldn't say they're on a crash course because you have these potential semifinal games where, again, McGill would have to play the Cougars or Rams, and Sask would have to possibly have to play the Huskies. Those are not easy games to win at all.
Lucas, as always, thanks very much for this, and we'll recap the national finals with you next week.
Can't wait, Jim. Thanks so much. Have a great time in Vancouver.
Is there a better name for a national championship than the Bronze Baby? I think not. The race for the women's title starts for Saski, who face Ottawa first. Alberta gets St. Mary's, while Regina will meet Ryerson to start the tournament. On the men's side, TRU has the tough task of handling reigning 5-time champs Carleton in the first round, with Calgary getting McGill and UBC facing OUA champion Ryerson. Let's head to the ice now. National championships take place this weekend in men's and women's hockey. Here's a look at the schedules. On the women's side, UBC gets McGill to start the tourney, while the host team Calgary meets Montreal. For the men, CanWest champ Saskatchewan sees Carleton first, with Alberta, who are looking for their 3rd straight University Cup title, facing off against St. FX. Coming up, time for some Combine CFL style.
The CFL and our partners at Football Canada want to make sure we keep growing, promoting, and investing in a safe game.
Hit!
Football Canada now requires all amateur coaches to be safe contact trained by 2017. By creating a standard of safety for all in our football community, we're making an already great game even better. Make sure your youth coach is safe contact trained, because making a safe game means making a better game.
Okay, we will have Combine news coming up, but first, a rarity, a pro day in Canada. Winnipeg, to be exact, as all roads led to the University of Manitoba to see the exploits of defensive lineman David Onyemata. Onyemata went through all of the Combine drills Monday in front of scouts from 17 NFL teams and 1 CFL team. The native of Lagos, Nigeria, did not play any football until suiting up with the Bisons. Onyemata ranked 2nd on the CFL Scouting Bureau and chose a pro day over the CFL Combine to showcase himself to NFL evaluators. His most impressive assets are his strength and wingspan, and many see him as a natural fit for the pro game. Although only at 6'3", some think his size may work against his long-term prospects south of the line. Many of his results place him in the top 12 or 15 for defensive linemen at the NFL Combine, although his effort on the bench would place him 2nd in both the CFL and NFL Combines. Now to an event many in the business refer to as the Underwear Olympics, the Combine, the CFL version. One of the biggest issues this year were players not making the trip. 3 of the top 4 were not in attendance, and number 3 ranked Josiah St. John from Oklahoma was in Toronto but did not test. The Western Mustangs were there in force, which reinforces what Greg Marshall told us a few weeks ago. It will be a major rebuilding season in London. To the action, bench press. The best of the Combine is right here. It was Philippe Gagnon that blew away the competition. Check out this effort.
2015, let's see what he rips off here today, Don. It looks like warm-up weight. It looks like lightweight. Holy man, is that bar flying.
At 20 now. Still flying. 30.
Wow, he's still got some left in the tank here. He's getting in the 40s.
A lot of players gathered around the walking track here, urging him on. Got another one. Forty reps.
Gagnon did an impressive 40 reps, with the next best being just 27. Between Gagnon and Lauzon-Séguin, it's no wonder the Rouge Aor boasts the most potent O-line in the entire CIS. How good was Gagnon's effort? Well, if he was at the NFL Combine, he would have topped that bench competition by a wide margin as well. Let's go vert. Levi Noel, formerly from the U of T Varsity Blues, had the highest leap at the Toronto Combine. However, Nick Termanson from UBC recorded the highest one overall, putting up an impressive 39.5 inches at the Edmonton Regional. Termanson has some serious hops. Noel, who spent last season with the CJFL's Windsor AKO Fratman, was the only top 20 prospect in the top 5. Former CIS Rookie of the Year Shaquille Johnson posted the furthest broad jump at the Regional Combine. The results of the broad jump looking a lot like the vertical leap, Johnson taking it with Noel and Termanson also in the top 5. In the shuttle event, we got more from the UBC DB. He and Montreal Caravan Mako Zapata tying for first. Between the Edmonton Regional and Toronto, Termanson had a terrific showing, certainly raising his draft stock. His teammate in the UBC secondary, Taylor Loeffler, tying for 5th. Laval's Felix Faubert-Lucier had the best time in the 3-cone event, with Concordia's Mikhail Charlin coming in 2nd. Here's the rest of the best times. Top 10 prospect Loeffler placing 3rd. The premier drill of the Combine is always the 40. Brett Blasco from the Calgary Dino showed well in the event, as did Doug Corby of Queens. However, the top time came from Shaquille Johnson, who was a solid second faster than the rest. If the scouts did not know Johnson, the former McGill Redmond, Western Mustang, and London Beefeater, well, he is certainly a known quantity now. Unreal speed from the Brampton native. Now joined by Justin Dunk, who did an outstanding job with cfl.ca covering the CFL Combine. Justin, thanks for joining us. We can analyze the numbers all we want. We just went through a whole slew of them, but you were there for the one-on-ones. Who stood out for you in terms of the one-on-one drills?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Jim, and I appreciate the kind words. Now, for the one-on-one drills in terms of the offensive and defensive linemen, Rupert Butcher was far and away the best defensive lineman in that group. Quinn Horton from Simon Fraser had a good showing as well. Then on the offensive line, Michael Couture had a sneaky good performance in the one-on-ones as an offensive lineman, and all those Laval guys, they were as advertised. They're rock solid. They're locked up pretty much as all first-round picks.
Now, if we go through the numbers, it would seem to be that this is a class that is strong but slow. What was up with those numbers across the board?
Well, I think you might be right, Jim, in terms of prospects on the defensive side of the ball. Now, there was a bit of an issue with the laser timing at the Combine. I'll give you one example. Shaquille Johnson, the receiver who was at McGill, then Western, then played CGFL with the London Beefeaters, came in and run in the 4.3s on Thursday at the Toronto Regional. Then he comes and runs again on Sunday and runs in the 4.6s. So something was up with the laser times, and Jim Barker, when he was watching some of the 40s, was shocked at what some of the faster guys had run on laser. So I think for this Combine, that a lot of the scouts would have relied on their hand times. But I agree with you. On the defensive side of the football, it's not a very fast group. On offense, there are some speedier guys for sure.
Who went beyond expectations in your mind?
Brian Jones talked about it after the Combine, and Jim, you know this well, that the AUS conference always gets slagged for maybe not being as competitive as the other three conferences in CIS football, and that was sort of part of the chip on his shoulder. And he came in and just blew this thing up the whole weekend. I heard he was a great interview. He obviously had great testing numbers that everyone can see, and in the one-on-ones, he completely ran over a defensive back when he tried to press him. I felt pretty bad for that poor kid. But Brian Jones was one. I think Michael Couture, I mentioned, had a good one-on-one session, but he showed he was a good all-around athlete as well. I think he was an offensive lineman coming into the Combine that wanted to try to get into that top tier of offensive linemen with the three Laval guys and Dylan Guy, and I think he probably put himself there with his showing. Who
really kind of lost a step in this?
Well, there was some defensive linemen that you thought coming in were a little undersized. Denzel Phillip out of Eastern New Mexico was a guy that I talked to scouts about before the Combine, and they thought he should have put on some weight and tried to play on the interior of the defensive line. And he stayed at defensive end, and he honestly just looked a little too small. He's really well built. Like, he is chiseled, but he just doesn't have that strength to line up with tackles or the speed to be an edge rusher. So he needs to put on some weight and go inside, and that would help his draft stock. Another guy that I thought really underwhelmed was Josh Stanford, sort of this enigmatic receiver out of Virginia Tech, and then he was at Kansas and sort of fell out of favor at both of those schools. Still came in with a lot of talent, although a lot of questions. Didn't do much to answer those questions. He actually skipped out on an interview with one of the CFL teams, didn't perform up to par in some of the athletic testing. So those would be a couple guys that I think stocks went down.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it, Justin, and we look forward to talking to you in the not too distant future.
Thanks, Jim. Always fun being on Krown.
It is easy to make the argument that there has not been a more consistent and dominant unit in the history of Canadian university football than a group who started to move through Quebec City in 2012. 3 first-rounders, including a first overall with Pierre Lavertu 2 years ago, have led the way into the pros. Now the last of that group have made a statement at the Combine and are all ranked in the CFL Scouting Bureau. It's possible that in a 3-year period, Laval could produce 5 first-round offensive linemen. The man responsible for that unit is offensive line coach Carl Brennan, who we talked to on Skype Tuesday. Carl, you've got the possibility of having 5 first-rounders. There's some people out there predicting maybe even 6 first-rounders in the space of 3 years. Tell me, when you were recruiting along with Glenn, and you saw these prospects in the field and you struck up conversations with them, did you see an outcome like this many years later?
I think you can't really, have an outcome of thinking that those guys will all be first rounders once the time comes for the CFL draft. But at some point in time, we felt that they were very good football players, given the opportunity for them to showcase their talent and perform through the years. The thing with those guys is that they were first-year stars right from the start. So the experience that they achieved through those years, some people played 13 games in their first 2 years. So the experience that they gained in those big games or whatnot is key to what happened to them right now.
Carl, even though most of these guys were first-year starters, what kind of learning curve did they go through, and how different of a player were they coming into your system to now when they're leaving your system?
I think first of all, they were all very quick studies. It's a testament to the coaching that they had at the high school and CEGEP level here in Quebec City, and the coaches, the work that they've done with them. That's a testament to them. I think what gave them the chance to perform at that level and to be quick studies is that they were extremely hard workers, and they were, all of them were, sponges to what I was telling them and what we were telling them. And they, I think from the conditioning program to the workout to the football wise, they came in and they accepted the challenge full go, and then that's why they are the players they are today.
Every coach has to go through cycles, and obviously you've moved a lot of great offensive linemen through your system. What does it look like for this coming year, and how's your recruiting season been?
Recruiting went very well. We got some kids that that we think could do a good job for us, and then obviously losing, we lost Pierre in 2013, and then Danny in 2014, Danny and Carl Lavoie. Now we're out of our 5 starters, we're probably going to lose 4 of them. So it's going to be a different face of on the offensive line for the Rouge. I believe we have good players. We recruited a guy named Sam Lefebvre, was with Team Canada for a number of years. We got a guy Ketel Assé from Montmorency, who we feel that could really do some good stuff for us. And we got guys coming in July here that we feel that could take those spots. And there's going to be competition, and sometimes change is good. It's a new challenge.
Well, I got to ask you before I let you go here, Carl. What was the peak for that group? I think it was 2013. I was so compelled by the play of that offensive line when I was at the Vanier Cup in Quebec City in 2013. I had to go down to the sideline to watch the whole fourth quarter so I could see these guys up close. And they were a fearsome front. Was 2013 the peak, the apex for that group as an offensive line in your mind, or is there another year that stands out?
Well, you know what, and I think you hit a good point right there, Jim. That group you're talking about, the Pierre Lavertu, Danny Gros, Phil Gagnon, Charles Vaillancourt, and Carl Lavoie, we got already 3 of them right now in first round picks. Now the 2 other guys are surely might be following their footsteps. I think just that group was a special group, and the special group of that that leader at that point was Pierre Lavertu, and yes, they were hungry. They were a hungry group, and they got after you.
Well, thanks very much. I appreciate you taking the time out, Carl. Say hi to Glenn for us, and best of luck as you head along in through spring camps and into this upcoming season.
Thank you very much, Jim. Appreciate you asking me to chat.
Thanks again for watching the Canada West edition of Krown Countdown U. Check back next week when we will recap championship action from CIS hockey and basketball. But for now, let's get out to the game.